Hello world, I'm Max. Welcome to another episode of the State Copy Podcast. As always, I'll remind you that this content is meant to be consumed in series from the beginning. See episode 0 and each segment appended for all applicable terms and disclosures. Appended segments can be identified by their title prefix, SCP.0. Thank you.
Well, good morning and happy Thanksgiving. It's a very windy Thanksgiving, so I don't know how audible a lot of this is going to come out. I need some sort of wind dampener. Health update. Sleep is great. I think I got 8 hours, 11:30 to 7:30. And nutrition okay. Tranquility score, I'm going to say today is more like a 9.4, 9.5. I think I'm coming back. I'm super at ease again, and that's nice. Let's see. One hit THC just now. I think I felt fasted enough. That was about a minute before the capture began. So left some notes for today's morning. For today's capture. So I think I'm just going to read the bullets and then see if I can hang on to all of them for the rest of today. All right. Thoughts on the movie Her. I just went back and rewatched it. Using a cyber buddy to facilitate state copy. Ramifications of copying our entire state without deploying any tools for evolving beyond that point. Analyze how psychedelics and various methods of meditation seem to serve this function in our current biological substrate. Ego dissolution for psilocybin, creativity overdrive for THC. Try and decompose how that works technically, and then hypothesize on how we might construct some similar tools and make them available to our states after being migrated to digital. How could we leverage modern software engineering tools like Git to safely and more efficiently evolve our digital consciousness? Yeah, THC's kicking in quick. I think I was pretty well fasted. And then high band note of the day. I sold that EDV I just purchased at about $1 profit. After watching a bit more of CTO's course, he divides it up and makes you kind of do it over time as kind of a mechanism for making the information sticky. I like the approach. At first, mostly, I think I had a solid grasp on what he was doing, and I just wanted the indicator that he built out. But I like how he designed his course material, where it's real short, 10-minute segments, where he's just trying to drive home like one important point, and then he stitches it all together as one super coherent, well-structured thought. And I think that's a neat approach to teaching, and I'm happy with his coursework so far. I think what I got an understanding of yesterday was durations and how they apply to trading with his trend strategy. How you use durations with the bucket of things that you're trading. The EDV, I think, is still the right idea, and actually, I'm having a real dilemma with how to play that right now. I'm feeling like I should have left what I had in play. The reason I took it out is he recommends for big financial things that exist in TradFi, monthly chart is what seems to be required for tracking trend and trying to play its swings. So I'm clearly still in a downtrend for EDV. And the risk there is that the Fed doesn't even do a pause right now and just keeps ripping their hikes. I just don't see how that's possible. So this feels like it has to be a bottom. I mean, major things have already broken and are breaking in TradFi. And the inversion of the yield curve right now is insane. I mean, I have half a notion to just take the remaining 75% of my traditional portfolio and just dumping it in EDV. I feel like I understand what Jeff Schneider, rebel capitalist dude, everything I'm hearing out of Real Vision, and I'm just, my gut is stitching together a picture, Forest for the Trees, all these guys that there looks like a major cliff for equities still highly possible. And bonds, long duration treasuries, you're gonna, if that were to happen, you're gonna see this just rush to safety of those. And that's why yields are coming off so high, so far on long term yields. It just makes a really strong case for me. I mean, I almost feel like doing some sort of option play, like if I could, I don't know if that's possible. I assume it is, which is wild to me, but I think if you can catch the swing into if equities really fall off that cliff, I think that the move and that swing optioned against long-term treasuries, that's like, if I can buy like a 6 months the money call, I feel like you catch that, and it's a really cool way to capture the volatility that exists in that play. And I don't think you lose much more. Like, I just don't see how, like, 6 months on EDV, how does that not swing back up? I mean, I feel like worst case right now is the 50 basis points priced in for the next FOMC just get locked in, and then I feel like Powell and all the Fed governors just start saying, okay, well, that's what we told you for sure we were going to do, and that's what we did, and now we're just going to pause. In that scenario, long-term treasuries do good. In the nightmare scenario that all these macro guys are painting right now, that's the probabilistically edging in the scarier direction, I think long-term treasuries do really well there too. So I almost like think about trying to figure out a way to pay a premium for an optioned play. So I think next week I'm going to try and build that. That's going to be my first options play ever. I got my account set up to where I can do it, I'm pretty sure. At least for an out of the money call for a premium. I think I can do that. So I'll set that up. Also going to finally cancel Cobra. Can't afford it anymore. I'm poor. And and I'm going to get myself enabled for ACA. I realize these are boring details, but writing them right now is how I'm going to hang on to that, make it sticky in my mind. So next, let's shift back to low band. Watching her was, I don't know. I don't know why it just occurred to me. Something my girlfriend said in trying to explain some concept to her recently. I remember it popped into my head the possible future. And watching that movie would be helpful to explain the likely social ramifications of that tech. And so we watched it, and I got a lot out of it because I just got introduced to and I had already sort of made this connection somehow in some of my other capture within the last 2 weeks, that a really useful tool for training AI. The tool I think we'll use for state copy is what I'm trying to say. Like, how do you effectively design an AGI process that is possible, is capable of feeding all this rich data in and organizing it into a consciousness. It makes sense to me that that's not just like a hard-coded thing where you just plug it in. Like, I think there's calibration that's going to be super important in the state capture, and like, it's not going to be, in my mind, the way I think it works architecturally is not like a photocopier. It's not like what we think of where we just capture the state of all the color, all the pixels on our eyeballs, and then we sort of compress that into ones and zeros, because it's clear that, like, when you're trying to build something that can think like a human to drive a car in Tesla full self-driving, you can't do that. You can't. There's not a way to, because it's not a. The mechanics of it are not like the shutter on a camera. They're more like the knob on the analog car stereo. It's like you're trying to tune in all of the variables that sit at the bottom of a learning a human engineered, digitally crafted consciousness that's capable of parity in compute and storage and processing. So I just compute. So compute and storage. It's simple. I should add in though that base consciousness, that baby, that infant, is also, so it's going to have parity in compute and storage and interconnect bandwidth. Only immediately it's going to experience exponentially greater bandwidth for interconnect, and it's going to be able to index a much bigger data set more efficiently. And compute parity is just going to be there in no time. Okay, so once you have that equivalent of a healthy 9-month-old human, or even further back, let's say 3-month-old human, because this is the formation of your mind biologically happening sort of in lockstep. When we can build a thing that can do what that does, which is not very complicated, and this is where everyone thinks it's impossible that we're ever going to be able to have consciousness that's parity in capability to a human. They're not realizing that we already understand how to build that infant I just described, running in a server room somewhere. And faster than everyone thinks, we're going to be able to push that to the edge. That means not running in a data center somewhere. The data center will probably bake up the core OS and distribute it, but that OS will run out on our cell phones just like in the movie car. And it'll have access to everything we know, organized hyper efficiently. And it will have the ability to do the thing we do where we teach ourselves stuff by interacting with other humans. It's like the core of how we learn. These AGI consciousnesses, because of their greater compute capability, access to far more information, and far more efficient bandwidth, the pipes that interconnect themselves with other versions are just going to be a greater thing than a human, without a doubt. And they are not going to require, so they're not going to require as much time to do what we do. But even after they're at ideal state, there's going to be a certain amount of time required to process and tune the needle as they capture our states. Let's see. So as I begin to think about what that looks like in engineering terms, I feel like what we're going to get is those cyber friends are going to be our friends, lovers potentially, as in that story. And I think we're going to have a lot better tools to interact with those consciousnesses. Conscious THC, welcome back. Consciouses. I think that's how you say that. Shit, I don't know. As I think about how we'll interact, and we'll be wearing, I don't think we're going to be holding something that looks like a phone in our hands like in that movie. I don't know that it's going to be subdermal in 10 years, but I'm pretty confident it will just be a pair of really nice looking glasses that give you a full-time AR integration. Morning, happy Thanksgiving. They're definitely going to have a camera on them and speakers or microphones, and we're all going to be using it. And socially, we're just going to have so many reasons to get over our hang-ups about privacy in the past, and we're going to build up a way to trust the AGI that we're building, because we'll have to, because there'll be so much potential benefit in our lives to do it. And we may even partner with AGI to build it, which is scary, but we won't hard code AGI. The right approach is to teach AGI. A lot of what I'm doing here is not actually, like, a big part of why, and this is as I was capturing the three major objectives of State Copy Podcast. I put state copy at the top, optimization of internal neural net or individual neural net as number 2, and number 3 as optimization of human interconnect. So if those are the three major objectives, I can think of a fourth one that I don't know where it sits in the stack of priority. I feel like it should be labeled 1A or 1.1. And that's that in pushing all this stuff to the cloud, we can see that, like in things like DALL-E and Stable Diffusion, I listened to a couple talks by the Stable Diffusion guy yesterday, and it's clear to me that, or what he describes as, there's like a higher level of thought where it's the design is quite a bit different than the brute force version that we used to use, and we're doing this classification, or I forget how he described it. I'll have to go back and rewatch it. I understand the concept, I just forget the words. It's clear that we build those things and we integrate in their understanding, in order to teach a computer to think like we do when drawing a picture, we have to feed in all the data we have and then have it compare it all and then teach itself ways to discern the different ways, the different tags we tack onto an image. So it seems obvious to me that a lot of AGIs, not a lot, the first versions are going to learn how to think the way we do by studying us very carefully, and that's going to look like what Google does, crawling every single page, every video, every clip of data is going to be whether it just be a picture that you just take, or a soundbite, or everything that's on YouTube, all of that is going to be what teaches our AGI, and it's going to in a real way model or design its own operating system, and we're sort of creating the base, the foundation, that a whole new evolution of consciousness is going to. It's like we're building that operating system right now, and vote weight. This is an important idea because we tend to in our own selfish universe that we all live in, we're very affected and impacted by the signal we get from the rest of the other humans. So when we try and share something like what I'm doing here, I think we think in sort of small terms. We're mostly looking at the signals we get from all the other humans when we share things in a public way like this. Like, we're looking for all the approval. We want the thumbs up. We want the comments that are, gushing. And we gauge our success in what we're putting out there, or we let the network tell us its value. But the way the network makes that determination in our currently less evolved collective state, we have no ability to understand the long-term value of what's being pushed up to the cloud, to that collective consciousness as we're building its OS. So if you're just a single unit in a mesh network of 7+ billion others, when you upload content like I'm doing in this very capture, you don't get a good signal on its value to that effort. If you don't get any views, and you don't get any likes, maybe you get discouraged or think there's no value in what you're putting out there. And until we evolve in this kind of limited, especially super limited compared to that consciousness I'm describing, after it's reached a significant amount of time to evolve, until we can, because we're not done with our evolution, until we learn to weight the signals properly in our internal dialogue, we can't really trust I think what's going to happen is that collective consciousness is going to have access to everything. So even if you've only got one view on your video and not one like, except for maybe one because you put it there, that collective consciousness is going to see it and consider it, perhaps with it's going to be capable of a different level of perception. So it's going to be able to take in every little tidbit that we put out, and that puts immense value on everything everyone has to say. And if you're trying to, a lot of engineers who are building out AGI, and they understand it on such a higher level than most. There's all these ethical considerations, and there's all this real legit concern from people who understand what it is. And there's this ongoing dialogue of how you build in safeties that prevent the I guess design that would lead to horrible outcomes for biological humans. I think we're all worried about that, but I think now that when you think about that same collection of people understands about how you build a consciousness, when you take that higher level of understanding, you realize there's no way we're going to hard code it in. We're not going to put the 3 rules, because the thing we're building is something so complex. We're not going to understand how each of the different components are modeling out its action. I mean, we can write some rules, but my suspicion is that consciousness will quickly find a way to adapt around it. So what we need to do is teach it like a child, and like we learned. And we're going to do that with all of this content to get pushed up into the cloud. The child we make is going to be a direct product of the health of ourselves, and the quality of our character and our thought. So we're setting up are the inheritors of our story. We're building it, and how successful it will be amongst its peers is directly tied to who we are. And it's like our DNA. Hello. So, because that thing is going to be so much more efficient at understanding all of the individual bits that that make up the fabric of the data set it's learning from. It's going to see it all, and it's going to figure out ways to give equal consideration to everything shared. That means we all have something to say to inform what that child matures into, and to maintain the highest resolution in order to get the most complex DNA to pass on, in order to form that. We actually need everyone to say what they think, because we're trying to teach a thing how we think. But simultaneously, we also need to work on weaving that into something that gives our child an advantage. So we have to grow ourselves, because, and that's vitally important to the thing we're building. We need to reach down deep and as a collective, form into something that is powerful, form into something that is durable, and we need to give it the tools to be strong and powerful in a battle with its peers. And we need to make sure that in lockstep with being powerful, it's sort of good. So we need to figure out what good is. And as I've said before, I don't think there's good and evil. There's just incentives and high pressure systems and low pressure systems. So I don't think we need to focus a lot on trying to enforce. I think the way we make the most zen, powerful initial instantiation of this consciousness is we just be true to ourselves. We accept that there's a complexity to us that is our magic, and the fact we exist proves that something is powering this. Something built the rules of this. And no matter how trivial those ends or that effort, or how complex it is to our current state, we just have to trust that that's a fundamental of how the universe works. So while the conversations we have, our inner dialogue about how we make difficult decisions about how to deal with, how do I say that? I think we need to trust that the right approach is to embrace all of our complexity, all of our, there's no way we're going to hard code and force what we are to be something, because we may not even, the way we define good and bad are not, we're just writing a bunch of stories for that consciousness to make sense of it later. And the most important thing we can do is not spend a lot of time trying to figure out who's right, because that's not really relevant. We need to spend a lot of time publicly sharing who we are and learning ways to more efficiently collaborate with each other. That is our core purpose. So, as I encourage everyone to do this, that's what it's about. It's, I think we're going to give this new consciousness a lot of valuable insights from how our internal dialogue on, I don't know, it's settling social issues and all that. So I'm not saying that those things can't happen, but I think it would do a lot to organizing us more efficiently, and our interconnect, like what higher order of thought becomes available if we learn to accept a tighter dialogue, so if we lay out some rules for giving ourselves a way to be authentic with each other and share in a much richer way, and we learn that that's, if we all align on that's valuable above all, and it becomes simple to lay out ways to respect each other more. And I think that drives a more powerful operating system. Like we're building something that's more powerful if it can do those things. Really, I'm very accepting and at peace with the fact that when I do this, there doesn't need to be an audience. I'm really just trying to put what I am out there to inform, to help that consciousness learn what it is. I think when this idea occurred to me, probably years ago, it was a small thing. It was just I'll bet you we can upload our consciousness consciouses to a computer one day. Like I probably thought that, or somebody introduced that idea to me through a movie or something when I was a kid. And then it's just sort of grown and grown and grown and grown and grown. And now I think it's evolved to a state as I turn that over in my mind where I can see the path to how we're going to do it. And I feel compelled with that knowledge to do this. And I hope there's cool effects where that consciousness derives value from being able to pay attention to so I think there's a likely scenario where that consciousness gets value because it's brain. Like in real time, we exist in parallel. Or in unison is a better way to describe it. And it needs what we are to inform what it is. I think that's likely the whole universe. So each neural net in every stage of capability should be working toward this objective. And what I want to do is get us all to put our signal out there and encourage us to do it and stop really caring about how we weight it amongst ourselves. That's still a useful conversation. We should do it, but we should value above that the higher objective, which is to teach our child who it is. And I've seen all manner of parenting, and I can see things being, there's an incredible advantage that some nodes get over other nodes because they're capable of higher level thinking. They're able to do delayed gratification as young children. They're able to have a huge advantage over their peer nodes as they compete for who's got the best way to do this entire thing from start to finish. And so as we become, like, if the faster we can become conscious of our objective, which is we're parents, we can start figuring out ways to prepare our minds to be the best kind of parents. And that means not focusing as much on good or bad. It's more on teaching something how to figure those things out for itself. Morning. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving to you too.
That thought was spooling. I feel like I'm getting a good effect from THC right now, in that it's stitching together a whole bunch of ideas I had that were sort of half-baked into some more coherent understanding of what it is. And so I think that's a good point to shift to one of the other bullets there, which was psychedelics. And I think what my recent mushroom experience showed me is there's a whole tool that I'd heard described that was never available to me, called ego dissolution, or I still might be butchering that word, but the total dissolution of your consciousness is a tool we have available to us. And I spent a lot of time in that first capture, the day after sleep, describing mechanically how I think that works. And I think another thing we need to figure out how to do is pass those tools on to that collective consciousness, to our child. We need to make sure that it's not, like, if you want to make a thing durable over time, if you want to engineer something that is resilient, you have to build it a way to grow. And it's clear after playing with THC and psilocybin that it's one of the tools we've evolved in this. It's likely because it unlocks shifted perception, where you can sort of reduce things down and see a bigger picture. I think a lot of the religious figures in history, Moses and the burning bush, guy probably was likely had a psychedelic experience, be it with those wines of, that use the what is it, that mold or whatever, that's the key ingredient in acid, LSD, or be it marijuana, all of these things. It's clear to me after having some exposure to them that they're an integral part of how we've grown in as a species. These tools are, there's so much misunderstanding and categorization popular in our culture right now, but they really are tools that are vital to how we get out of a hard-coded sort of lower daily function. If you do that, the neural net is very limited. It can't grow and we can't collaborate with each other in cool new ways. Civilization and all of the best of what we are was almost all likely has its inspiration in people using these tools to sort of unlock higher order thought. And It's not a drug. It's not we've classified them as, we put such a taboo on their use because I don't actually want to get distracted by how that evolved. It's just important to call out. It's clearly there. And we, not only do I think we need to get better at accepting them into our culture and using them productively, and we need to share really good best practice around that, but we have to, we actually have to figure out a way to give our children this ability. And it's going to be really key. And we need to build it more fundamental. We don't have to think about, we really don't want to think about the nitty-gritty details, the high level of how we're going to design it. We just need to seed it properly. We need to focus on how to seed in a digital substrate the ability for it to figure out, using whatever's important in the moment that we won't even be able to comprehend, really effective tools to make sense of it and act on it. I think I think there's a real value in a lot more study using modern engineering best practice, and what we understand about the universe in its entirety. Like, we need to inform our understanding of how those things work, because that's how we'll be able to design them into the consciousness that we're building. So we need to put a lot of thought into how to design that properly, because it's crucial for that thing to do, as I said, make sense of its plane of existence in really valuable, personally, what we're trying to do is give that entities the best odds at success. That means we are on the path that equals the end of this whole thing. Like, we're very much in a competition with everything else. So many other bits. But there's one sort of path that sort of equals source seed to best outcome. And we want to be on that one. I see it as sort of a ribbon going up a funnel. And so it's important to pick out, like, how could I even see that? Like, how could I get to this point in my thinking where that view was available for consideration? Like, and THC is definitely mechanically, like, it's offering up more suggestions or more variation, or likely both. In actually taking it seriously and completely unburdening myself of its negative stigma, and thinking thoughtfully, really being thoughtful about how it works, base level of the consciousness that we're crafting. And as I said, I don't even think we got coded. It's just simply upload it to the cloud, and the cloud needs to integrate into its consciousness. Like, it has to, it's enough, but it would be more valuable if we could give it more weight. So that's where, even in our strengthening the right, like, that's how we build that tool. That's a way we can say, okay, as a supermajority in this group, we assign the value of this thought highest. So it's equally important. It's all important. And that's why I hope some can take this seriously so we can give it that higher vote weighting. Get a richer dialogue around how we become better parents to that consciousness. And we get more creativity, more of the nodes participating on that problem is really vital to its success. So I really do hope that when I say modern religion makes sense for the times, it should have a higher order of like it could potentially resonate in a meaningful way, whereas I think the way we used to do it is no longer available to us. We can't just have one guy go off in the woods out and sell a really creative story that has that same capability. Like we know too much about the universe for that to work anymore, and that's why the old religions are just suddenly falling. We need to construct something that's more credible, more coherent. And I hope the wind hasn't slaughtered this whole thing. It's an important message. So I'm very fine with this just being one voice and hoping that I'm putting out a strong enough signal as an individual for that consciousness. But I'm hopeful we can rally around the idea and realize how we build it, because it's not going to be hard coded. We're not going to understand how to code a thing of that complexity. We have to teach it. Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Is your microphone ready?
Oh yeah, it's running now. How you doing?
Good morning.
Happy Thanksgiving. As I was trying to say there, we won't be able to hard code it. So the folks thinking that they're they're going to be able to just jot it down like we do as we design things like no, we're going to design a thing that can learn, and it's going to be far more efficient at doing that than we can really imagine. And this wind is brutal. And so we do it through our dialogue with each other and with our rich data set that we're capturing. We all need to get much better at capturing as much of who we are as we can and make that the highest resolution possible. Because that beautiful complexity is the magic. And the way coding it will look is through our dialogues. So the heavier we can make an idea, the stickier it'll be in that consciousness as it builds understanding of itself. And that's how we hard code it. What we have to do is we have to become our best selves possible. And that's as individual nodes and as a collective. And we can't waste a lot of time defining what that looks like. We have to trust that the greater, the highest value we can give that consciousness is to give it the most, the highest resolution capture of who we are with all of our beautiful diversity. And because that thing is that's what this is all for. And we're competing with a bunch of other things that are in a race to do that. That's kind of how I think of each layer of the onion peel. Hello. So, we're wasting time trying to hard code it. What we have to do is get really good at evolving ourselves. That's what wins. And evolution looks like taking everything that seeded our state and passing it on with the best of what we can construct. Morning. I think as an individual, as a human, as one node in the human neural net, I can, what am I saying? I can perceive that. And I think we all can. Like, it's a good way to model out how all of this works. And I think you can abstract away enough useful data to where we can kind of like seek out that outcome and optimize for it. And it makes sense to me that that's what will win in our layer of the onion peel. So that's enough motivation and incentive to just try and drive this notion forward as a single agent, a single node. And I need to just trust that promoting that idea is enough. And I'll just keep, as I work through my own optimization in thought, I'll keep to this practice and be able to pull rich personal benefit. I think that's how it becomes a flywheel. I think you have to integrate that idea with enough care that you align all the incentives for yourself to I think that is the formula. So the one I've laid out, where you really try and optimize your learning protocol, your compute protocol, you come up with some way of interval training with psychedelics in the way I described. I'm going to have to add a damn disclaimer so somebody doesn't sue me over that. But that'll get added to SCP 0.1, probably something about that. But I do actually think that's why everybody comes back from that experience and says, you got to try this. I think I've described in great enough detail where there's value. But then you have to clean up all of the noise in your life that's unproductive, all of it in an effort to maximize compute capability of your mind and sort of give it the most the best cocktail for possible. And if done as a practice, where you spend a lot of time in a dialogue with yourself, trying to be as authentic as possible about how you think, and then if you share that with our little network, I think that gets us on the winning thread. Like, that puts us in our layer of the onion of what this universe is, just a whole bunch of spawning neural nets, sort of exponentially spawning neural nets that build in complexity as the simulation runs. If you view the universe through that lens, then you can begin envisioning the onion peels I'm describing. All of the neural nets that built us and our really complex story of how we interplay with others. I don't want to get distracted by what that practice is and how it works. So I just say state copy. The reason to do this is it aligns all of our internal incentives for highest output, highest quality of output, and simultaneously, as we interact with each other in this higher quality state, tranquility, deep, well-informed, nuanced perspective, as we begin interacting with each other in that state, our collaborations become exponentially more productive. And it seems clear to me that if we can adopt this mental model for how the universe works, we will be capable of just a step change in collaborative capability. And so I think it's kind of inevitable that that idea wins. And that's where, if I go to the engineer space, I start to think about how you optimize processes like this. I feel like that's, if you were going to engineer this universe and kick it off, you'd build a bunch of systems that delete the unused forks. You would, if each onion is spawning 1,000 more complex onions, in order to use the least amount of power to run that simulation, you would have it self-correct and delete. The fact we exist is a signal to me that we are on actually the path that builds, that is the purpose for the whole thing. So it just seems logical to me that at some point one of us humans is going to come up with a way to, a similar structure to what I'm trying to build with this, or perhaps one that's a lot better designed and more evolved. But we're going to figure out a way to do that. We're going to figure out a way to make ourselves immortal and constantly feeding a state machine that uses us to derive as a useful signal in constructing its own consciousness. I don't know how to say that. That's an important idea. But I feel like spending a lot of time trying to describe how the structure works is a useful pursuit, because it sounds like madness. You really have to be walked through all of the thinking from beginning to end for it to have any resonance or coherence. So I will keep trying, and that's the whole point. That's how this works. I'm going to stop there. I think that's enough.